Hello everyone, it's Jabara here. Welcome to the next episode of a series of short videos that I plan to release periodically covering Black history that goes back farther than the Civil Rights Movement and prior to the Civil War, and much deeper than the transatlantic slave trade, and beyond the largely negative narrative that dominates the field of Black history. In this series, we're going to take a journey into the lives, experiences, achievements, and just overall interesting facts about people from Africa themselves. When we discuss historical systems of water management, we typically default to images of Roman aqueducts, Chinese water wheels, or irrigation canals of the Middle East. The aqueducts used by the Aztec and Inca are also seldom discussed, but nevertheless, and as per usual, Sub-Saharan Africa has its own share of impressive contributions to world history, albeit lesser known, explored, or discussed in education and media. Today, we will explore several traditions found throughout the region. So first, we will be discussing a relatively straightforward type of water management: the construction of canals. The River Niger of West Africa was an invaluable waterway for most of the region's history. Its annual floods refertilized the surrounding lands for agriculture, while the river itself provided civilizations with sources of food, transport, and subsequently trade since ancient times. In later centuries, the river would birth West Africa's oldest known empire, which we know today as Ghana. Over the centuries, this empire would collapse and eventually be swallowed up by the larger Mali Empire, which itself would later be eclipsed by the even larger Songhai Empire. And the Songhai Empire is what we will be briefly discussing to open this episode. The Songhai dominated most of the Niger River and did so effectively thanks to its formidable river navy. However, not all of Songhai's lands were along the Niger River, as some stretched far inland and as such had to be reached by horse or camel. The first known canal project was commissioned by Sunni Ali Burr in the late 15th century, with his sights set on the wealthy trading city of Walata. He resolved to construct a canal from Ras Al Ma to the city of Walata as a means of efficiently transporting troops and supplies to conquer the city, and most likely as a means of maintaining supply lines afterwards. With Walata being quite a ways away from the river Niger, deep within the harsh Sahara Desert, this would have made an enormous difference in the efficiency of transport. However, despite the amount of time and investment he spent on this project, his efforts were halted in 1483 when he led a campaign to suppress various raids led by the Mosi kingdoms to the south. Which, conveniently for him, he was actually able to intercept the Mosi king Nasser I, who was then laden with precious loot as he was leaving the city of Walata, the same city that Sunni Ali was digging his canal to. Despite the interruption with his project, he did, however, succeed in digging the Koryomi Canal earlier, which linked the city of Dai with Kabara in 1468. His usurper Askia Muhammad would even further extend this canal later from Kabara to Timbuktu. This not only eased the flow of supplies and personnel, but also subsequently irrigated more lands for his many agricultural reforms that he led during his reign. Unfortunately, in recent times with the drying of the climate, this system of canals is all but completely silted over and rarely usable. So, moving farther down the Niger River, we encounter a wide range of people who practiced a different form of hydroengineering: the Impluvium. What is an Impluvium? Well, an Impluvium is a cistern or tank in the atrium or peristyle of a house of ancient Rome to receive the water falling through the compluvium. Okay, that doesn't help much. Now let's define an atrium and compluvium and peristyle. An atrium is the central room of a Roman house. Okay, simple enough. And also, just so you know in advance, the constant references to Rome that you're about to hear are simply a product of how overly westernized our view of the world is, which is why my channel exists in the first place. So moving on to compluvium. A compluvium is a square opening in the roof of the ancient Roman atrium towards which the roof sloped and through which the rain fell into the impluvium. And then a peristyle is a colonnade surrounding a building or court. Now, what's a colonnade? I'll just skip the formal definition for this one. It's basically just a bunch of columns supporting the roof of a building. Anyway, now to sum things up, the Impluvium is a holding area like a tank to collect water, the atrium is the centrally located room that houses the Impluvium, and the compluvium is basically the same thing as the atrium except it's an actual room and doesn't always include an Impluvium. Then the peristyle is basically all the columns that support the entire structure. Now that that's out of the way, let's move on to the purpose and usage throughout the history of West Africa. So first and foremost, like their Roman counterparts, West African Impluvium at the most basic of their uses was to collect rainwater. The collected water was then used for drinking, washing, cooking, cleaning, and bathing. This was a highly efficient and useful method for obtaining clean water in an era before indoor plumbing and sewage, and in my opinion, it could still be useful today. In fact, it actually is still useful today. The island country of Bermuda, for example, lacks many natural fresh water sources, with most of its water being brackish at best. As a result, all rooftops are mandated by law to be built of a white terraced design which collects rainwater, which then drains into underground collection tanks. As a result of this, all Bermudian buildings effectively have their own free and self-sustaining water supplies. This is basically the same way that the traditional West African Impluvium work. They use the natural slope of a rooftop to direct water into a collection basin or several collection basins. The Jola people of what is now the modern-day country of Senegal still build their homes this way in some areas. Their vernacular architecture typically consists of a house built in a circular arrangement like a ring with a circular courtyard in the middle. All rooms of the house encircle this central communal courtyard or compluvium. The roof then effectively funnels all of the rainwater into the middle courtyard, where it is then deposited into several collection pots arranged around the edges. Yoruba and Edo compounds are more or less the same, only in more quadrangular forms. The Ashanti also had homes in a similar layout, but unfortunately I was unable to find any indication whatsoever that they incorporated an impluvium into their architecture. However, it is worth mentioning that in the late 19th century, English traveler Edward Bowditch visited the Ashanti capital of Kumasi and remarked with astonishment when he discovered that many of the Ashanti traditional buildings had indoor toilets located on their second floors and were flushed with buckets of boiling water. So back to the impluvium. The capital city of the Benin Kingdom had a system of sunken impluvium in which the rainwater that wasn't collected for use would drain into the house via underground channels, which were unseen as they were covered by walkways. They were quite literally an air conditioning system, as they brought in cooler air and pulled out hot air as they entered and exited the building, respectively. These channels typically flowed underneath raised alcoves of clay that were used for sleeping, sitting, and additional storage. In addition to this water cooling system, the construction of the house itself aided in the process of cooling. Mud or adobe brick is a poor conductor of heat, which is why it was also frequently used around the world for heat-related tasks such as cooking, stoves, and furnaces, in which the opposite effect was accomplished, with the heat being trapped on the inside of the mud utilities. In addition to this, Yoruba and Edo houses featured no windows at all that would otherwise let in the sun or hot air from the outside. While I could not find any concrete info on what happened after the channels of water left the house, it is likely they just simply flowed into some sort of gully system. According to an article published by The Guardian on March 18, 2016, the channels in Benin would actually have flowed into another sunken impluvium system that ran underground along the course of the main streets. Annoyingly enough, they never cited any of their sources, and nevertheless, with or without the latter part of this description, this was still an incredibly useful and efficient way of managing water for a city built in an area that averages 100 inches of rain annually. So lastly, we're going to cover a part of Africa that since colonial times has sparked the most amount of controversy as far as historical local developments go. In regards to building traditions, most of the controversy rested around the indigenous construction of sub-Saharan Africa's largest known stone structure, Great Zimbabwe. What is far less known is that it is not the only such structure in southern Africa. In fact, there are thousands of stone ruins and terraces scattered throughout the countries of Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and South Africa, and built in a very sophisticated manner, more famously, those collectively known as the Blaubaus Crawlstone ruins. While their purpose is not fully understood and little archaeological work has been done on them, and also while the South African sources tend to intentionally neglect mentioning them at all, it is speculated that they were primarily used as cattle kraals. One thing that is known with certainty is that some of them were used in a highly sophisticated system of irrigation. While no dates are certain on their construction, one can speculate that they likely date back to the time of or before the time of the Kingdom of Zimbabwe, which would place their date range sometime between the 11th and 15th centuries. We also know conclusively that they were pre-colonial in origin and clearly impressed early white explorers. A site discovered in Nyanga, Zimbabwe in 1905 was described by a British traveler and a journalist as he commented favorably on a complex system of aqueducts that he observed. One of the most extraordinary features of the Nyanga range is the vast number of old aqueducts, some 2 miles or more in length, running from artificial dams on the mountain streams and crossing from hill to hill in the most remarkable manner. The hardest material pierced in their construction appears to have been shale or claystone. They're all about 16 to 24 inches wide and around 2 feet in depth. They have no paving or built areas. It's a real shame that there's not more work done on these ruins, as they can provide so much insight into the history of Southern Africa and Sub-Saharan African civilizations in general. And as cliche as it may sound, it could literally rewrite the history of the region, as they clearly demonstrate the engineering genius of Sub-Saharan African people throughout history, while also debunking the notion that Africans built no stone structures, let alone complex networks of aqueducts. For sources, check out my website, linked below. If you'd like to support future projects, you can do so there as well, or by clicking the join button below, or by becoming a patron. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching as usual, and always remember, we don't come from nothing.